evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. It is February 11th, and this is the Town of Rhinebeck Board meeting. Would everybody please stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have a couple of announcements. First of all, taxes are due on the 28th of February. After that, for the month of March, there's a 2% charge on unpaid taxes. And exemptions, all exemptions, which are STAR, veterans, senior, agricultural, and wholly exempt, are due by March 1st. So please contact our assessor's office if you have any questions. Also, although our townwide reassessment reevaluation is going really, really well, there are still people out in the field collecting data. So we had thought we'd be done in February. We might linger on a little bit, but they're still out there working. So if you have any concerns, call Town Hall, call the assessor's office. People are wearing IDs though. Also, we appointed one of our own, Brennan Carney, to fill our county legislator District 11 seat. So the town board will be looking for a replacement. We don't know when. I guess that's something we can discuss a little later, how we want to proceed. But we did it through a very open process, and we'll do that again for this seat. So if anyone is interested, send in your resume and a cover letter. I guess we don't have a timeline, but we can talk about it. Does anybody have anything else? Any other announcements? I'd like to make a motion for the approval of our prior minutes from January 28th, 2019 for our regular town board meeting, and for February 1st, 2019 for our special town board meeting. Thank you, Alan. Is there any discussion? Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Any committee or liaison reports for anybody? Okie dokie. We have two public hearings tonight, which I'm opening. The first is for a local law amending our town code, Chapter 125, zoning in the matter of establishing a workforce housing district as a floating district, providing a procedure for locating a workforce housing district, and setting forth regulations for development therein. And our second is a local law amending Chapter 107 of the Town of Rhinebeck Code. It's our solar and wind farm law, and it's to create a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes for this zone. Warren, do you want to take over? Are we taking public comment? Are we going to hold this open? Should we just take public comment?
Why don't we just take public comment on the workforce law? And I don't know, would we have John Mensch from the committee that worked on this, and Art Broad, our planner, who worked on this, if you want to say anything.
Yep, and we'll take all comment. I want to say, I think it's our intention, I'm pretty sure it's our intention, you guys correct me if you're wrong. We've received comments from the county and from the planning board, and I know that the town board wants to get together with Warren, or a part of the town board, and our town planner to make tweaks to the law. So we'll have to hold this open, but we're happy to take comments now. So if anybody would like, John, you want to comment first? Or?
No, I mean,
Okay.
the law as proposed really was,
Okay.
was what we...
So we're open for comments from anybody.
I would be willing to comment and have this opportunity to do so. We sent in our recommendations and our comments from the planning board. As you know, Edna, Melody Moore, and myself, members of the planning board, have also sent in comments on this as well.
Yes, get closer. Yeah, that's good.
Is it working now?
Yeah.
Is that better? What do you think? Anyone hear anything?
Can you shake the wire for me?
Just have to get closer.
Just do it until I pick it up here.
Close.
Is this it?
If I pull,
No, you're good.
Try that.
All right, is that any better?
Much better.
All right.
There you
What we would like to do, and what we've asked for, is to have a workshop with the town board to go over our concerns and to try and work out a resolution to those concerns, and so we can come up with a proper approach to affordable housing in this community. I have brought with me all the different documents that we've submitted to the town board. I know that's the record. If you want, I'm prepared to read them all, but I think we'd all just assume maybe not have to go through that. So basically, what I'm just asking for, and what the planning board is asking for, and I think we recommended, is a workshop with the town board to go over our concerns and our suggested alternatives to what's currently before you. And happy to answer any questions if anybody would like to ask me. And I think this thing is coming apart.
Well, we can give you warrants.
But as long as you can hear this.
go. Yeah.
And I believe they actually...
You have to hold it close to your mouth, I think.
I don't think Panda needs this one, right?
They don't need any of them. They have a mic on that camera.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Would you please come up and,
I actually have a question for Michael Trimble. My name is
Closer to
Edna
your mouth,
Lockman. You got it?
There.
My name is Edna Lockman. I'm a member of the planning board. And I would like to ask Michael Trimble to explain something, if you would. Michael and I have taken the position that the workforce housing law, the draft law, is unworkable in its current form. That it is asking the planning board to do things that we do not have the authority to do, and it is depriving us of things that we actually should have the authority to do, and I would like to ask Michael to explain why that has been our position.
Okay, I know that we sent you all our documents, but the public probably hasn't seen them at this point. And I think what basically is being suggested in the law before you currently is to do basically a local law which would both create a district where affordable housing would go in with conditions under which that would be allowed, as well as to approve what would be called a concept plan, which is actually a fairly detailed site plan, as a local law. Our current work with the planning board, the way we do things is we do things under special permit and site plan for things such as this. This is what we're doing for rock ledge, what we're doing with grass mirrors, what we're doing with the gardens. This is how we function. And this system has worked very well. We get things done. I think that we're a very thorough planning board. I think we're a very careful planning board. What we don't understand is why this process is being set aside for this one particular type of residential development. We also don't understand how, as a local law, the planning board would be participating, for example, as an involved agency. DEC regulation says that's not true. Given Article 12 of our zoning law under amendments, our only function when it comes to a local law passed by the town board is as an advisory body. We don't understand why our current process of review and approval for projects, land development projects in the town of Rhinebeck is being supplanted by something else, which basically we feel is unworkable. What we'd like to do is really sit down and really go over this with the town board, with Art Rowe. I know Jim Levy, our new town planner, has some questions about why this is being proposed as well. And that's what we're asking for tonight, is an opportunity to sit down with you all and really go over our concerns, go over what we feel needs to be done to make this a more workable law. Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else?
Don't you want Warren to respond to?
No, I think we're here to listen.
Oh, okay.
I'm on up.
Sorry.
I'm Debbie Dick, I live in the village. I would like to hear a response to what Michael and Edna are saying. As somebody who hasn't been intimately involved with the process, it's a little puzzling, having been a planning board member, and so I'd just like to hear what you guys are thinking.
I'm going to do a short response because we've been dealing with this for quite some time. We had a special committee, a workforce housing committee that was appointed. I believe Michael and Edna were on that committee. Okay, but maybe it was people that looked like you that were at the meeting when I went to
I
several
don't think
meetings.
anyone else in Rhinebeck was quite like me.
Okay. As a result of the efforts of the committee with the assistance of our planner, Art Rod, this law was produced as a floating zone, which would require the approval of the town board for this particular area that's going to be rezoned to allow for a more intensive workforce housing project, which we hope might be in partnership between the town and a not-for-profit or some other group that might come in and want to establish workforce housing in a particular area of the town that would have to be rezoned for that project. It's not true that the planning board would not be an involved agency. They would have site plan approval over the project. They would also have a referral review. So they are an involved agency, and they could be lead agency in any secret review. At this point, I think we've decided the town board is going to keep the public hearing open, is going to consider with the new planner of the town and certain members of the board, the comments we received from the planning board and Michael and Edna, and the comments we received from the county planning, which were quite positive. We will decide where to go next in terms of what changes we want to make to the law, if any, and how those changes will be made. So I think at this point, all we're going to do is keep the public hearing open and adjourn it till April, so we have time.
Or would I add?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Might I add one point?
Absolutely.
Please come on. So we can-
And I'll do it from here.
You
What
don't
I-
have to pull that speaker over there, Michael.
Oh, I have.
I can use this.
What I'd like to address is the point raised about why is this particular procedure being considered for the workforce housing district. And I'm going to do so simply by reading one paragraph from the executive summary that has been prepared concerning the law. And this is the proposed employ of a floating district is neither a concept new to Rhinebeck, nor are the requirements set forth within the proposed local law for initiating and carrying forth review of a proposed development within the floating district. More specifically, the establishment of the workforce housing district would provide for a second floating district within the town zoning law, the first being the active senior citizen district that was set forth upon adoption of the current town zoning law in December of 2009. While the application and review requirements stated within the proposed law for consideration of a workforce housing development follow closely those set forth previously at zoning law section 12568 KK 18 for consideration of an active senior citizen housing development. The bottom line is essentially the Affordable Housing Committee thought it would be appropriate and with guidance from both Lauren and myself to not reinvent the wheel, but to basically employ a procedure and a review procedure for workforce housing that is the same as, or very much the same as, that it was already been provided in the zoning law by legislative act of the town board upon adoption of the zoning law in 2009. I think that's an important point that this is not a new procedure. It's exactly as already exists in the zoning law. Thank you.
May I comment?
Yeah.
So, public hearing.
Before you do, Annette, does anybody else who haven't, hold on, Annette, does anybody want to comment who hasn't commented yet?
I do not have the zoning law in my mind for the senior housing district, but I do remember specifically that it requires a special permit from the planning board, and Michael is right now scrambling to find it to see what else it might include, if anything. But it is different from this proposed draft law.
More complicated.
Art, what did you say?
It's more complicated.
What is more complicated?
After the town board's decision to create the senior citizen district, then it becomes a matter of both special permit and site plan for the planning board. In this particular case, we said it was redundant that the planning board have to grant both approvals after the rezoning. We basically dropped the special use permit requirement and kept the site plan review.
Because the special use permit would in effect already be done by the town board creating the building
Exactly,
district.
through legislative discretion.
Yeah. So the difference here is that the town board has legislative discretion to create a floating zone for workforce housing, and then the planning board goes through the process, as they always do, with a site plan approval.
Precisely.
That is actually, I believe, not correct, because my reading of the draft law indicates the floating zone is created and the quote concept plan is approved at the same time, and only then does the planning board look at the quote site plan, which by that time is approved by the town board. The planning board has no ability to use our usual authority to make changes or to require conditions to mitigate negative impacts. So it is not a site plan as established by our zoning law. Have you found anything more of interest on the senior housing?
Just the fact that I found out that this really gets to the crux of the matter, and I am somewhat disappointed in what I'm hearing from Art, because he knows very well that the senior housing was different. I don't understand why this seems to be such a big problem to basically use the process we have right now. If you do an overlay, just the way you've done for the water resource overlay, as you've done for the mining, and then the town board can basically, if it finds different properties which it feels meet the necessary requirements for affordable housing, they can include that property in. The special use permit, the site plan would then enable the planning board to do what we do, what we're trained to do. Apparently, the Department of State in New York feels that it's important that we all be trained to do this sort of thing for residential developments and for land development, which the town board has training for other areas, other things that they do. They don't have the training that we do. I don't understand why this process is being set aside. It is not exactly as Art said it is. The use of a special permit does not further complicate. The town board can very easily, in an overlay district, the property in question right now, go in there, and then they can rezone it to be in that overlay district.
So are you suggesting that we create the zone now through legislative discretion and then have the planning board do site plan and special use?
Exactly. There's no reason why the town board can't do that. And there's no reason why that would not uncomplicate matters. We've been told that one of the problems is that doing it the way the planning board does it now, in order to get the necessary density and other considerations which seem to be required for affordable housing, the town board does have to do a rezoning somewhere. And the town board does that for everything. When we just went through the rezoning in 2009, we changed the zoning everywhere, and it changed a number of the things in the town and a number of the obligations that people had to go through to get projects filled. That's not a big problem to do that as an overlay district. Then if all a developer has to do is come to the planning board, like every other developer has to do in this community for any project they wish to do, they get a special use permit and a site plan approval by the planning board. I don't see why that is considered to be such an onerous obligation, since we're required for every single other use, special use that goes into this community. I don't understand it. I've been on the planning board now for more years than I can remember. I've been the chairman of the planning board. I worked on the comprehensive plan committee. I have been the zoning enforcement officer for this community on 4 different occasions and had to become intimately aware and knowledgeable about our zoning law and how it functions. We have an excellent planning board. We have a staff downstairs that moves things along very well. And I don't understand why we're setting all this aside for a new untried process that I personally do not believe will work properly. I do not believe that the planning board will be involved in it, because I think there are legal reasons why we won't be. But as I said before at the very beginning, I would like an opportunity to sit down with all of us to discuss this and go over it. I don't think that's asking too much. Your planning board unanimously asked you to do that and also recommended you not adopt this law. I think just out of respect for the planning board, I think it's something that you could do. We're all volunteers, we don't get paid for what we do, we put in a tremendous amount of time. I don't think we're asking for too much. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? We will hold this open until, when should we, April. I think we need April because of our schedules. April 8th. In that time, we will figure out how we want to go ahead with this, whether we're meeting with the planning board, whether we're meeting with the planning board and the Affordable Housing Committee. And we certainly would like to, talk to our new planner as well as Art. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. We also have a local law amending Chapter 107 of the Town of Rhinebeck Code for our solar pilot. Are there any comments regarding that?
You want to quickly explain what this is? Yes. Oh,
We're going to talk about.
do you want to just comment before I, let me
No, I'd
just
like
explain?
for you to explain.
Let me just explain what the law is. And basically, the town has, after a huge effort, passed its own solar law, which permits solar facilities to be developed in the town on private property and residence and commercial property, and to allow larger scale solar farms, we call them. Under the New York State real property tax law, solar facilities are exempt from taxation, and it would be not the whole property, it's only the increase in value of the property by virtue of the solar improvements for a period of up to 15 years. And the town or a municipality has the right to override that. And the town did not override that. We allowed the exemption to be in place, except we can override it through requiring a pilot for, which is a payment in lieu of taxes for the large-scale solar farm facilities. And that's what this local law provides, that from here on, after the passage of this law, anybody who comes into town and wants to develop a solar farm, a larger scale solar facility, will not be exempt for 15 years, or will be exempt for 15 years from paying a tax, but they'll have to negotiate a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes with the town. And we kept the law as open as possible so that we would negotiate on a case-by-case basis with the solar developer, depending on the size of the project, the output, the income, the improvements, what a reasonable payment in lieu of taxes would be. And that's all that this local law provides. It doesn't affect residential properties that are putting solar facilities on their roofs or in their backyards. It will only impact solar developers. And most municipalities that have enacted solar laws to regulate solar facilities and larger scale facilities have developed pilot laws in this form or similar forms. I'm sorry, if anybody else wants to comment then.
Anybody want to comment? Come on up.
My name is Jeff Irish. I'm a resident of the town of Rhinebeck. I formed a company 17 years ago here in Rhinebeck to design and install solar electric systems called Hudson Solar. We recently merged with another company and are now going by the name SunCommon. We employ right now 40 people here in the town of Rhinebeck.
Excuse me, what's the name of the new company?
SunCommon.
Oh, Sun.
And we employ 40 people here out of our office on Hook Road in the town of Rhinebeck. This confuses me a little bit. We're very active developing solar farms and community solar projects throughout the Hudson Valley and Capital District. That's my wife's ringtone, but it's not my phone. So
Good.
that's the reason it stopped me in my tracks. My phone is over there. Where was I? Okay. So,
Spouses do that.
yes.
They distract.
Yes.
Good thing we have Sally.
So anyway, it's the town of Rhinebeck's policy, I understand, to encourage community solar and solar of all types. It's in the comprehensive plan. Those very words are written into the town's solar zoning law. And this seems to me like a gigantic step in the opposite direction. NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, is acting acts as a state agency to help encourage the development of solar and also to analyze the solar industry, which is still an emerging industry, and help educate municipalities and towns and other stakeholders in the industry and how it can operate and how it should operate. NYSERDA has come out with their own studies, and they came out with a white paper in July of 2017, which is now over a year and a half ago, and they recommended that pilots not be applied to projects that are under 1 megawatt in size. And the town of Rhinebeck solar zoning law already prohibits any community solar system larger than about half a megawatt because of its square foot limitation. So this seems to be putting the town pointing in the opposite direction of the state of New York and NYSERDA. Since July 2017, when NYSERDA came out with that recommendation, there's been several developments in the industry that have also come up as barriers and impediments to going forward and have added cost. For one, our glorious president put a 30% duty on solar panels, also put a duty on steel and aluminum, and if you take solar panels, steel and aluminum, we've now basically covered about 90% of the material that goes into a solar farm. The Public Service Commission, in order to regulate and control the deployment and the speed of deployment of community solar, came out with an order referred to as a Community Distributed Generation, or CDG order, where they stepped down the compensation of solar farms such that the utilities don't get overwhelmed and get potentially put out of business by net metered solar farms. In the last year and a half, Central Hudson has moved through all 5 of their tranches, depleted all 5 of their CDG tranches, meaning that any new solar farm that currently applied for an application to the utility would only get about half of the compensation that a solar farm a year and a half would have gotten. And that year and a half was when NYSERDA recommended that no system below 1 megawatt be subject to a pilot. The town's solar zoning law is a challenging one. The requirements on screening and some of the other studies, I have personal experience, are proving to be very costly. I think we're sticking with these projects because we have 2 in front of the planning board right now. we're sticking with them because we've had such high interest in the order of hundreds of people in the town of Rhinebeck, the village of Rhinebeck, and the hamlet of Rhinecliff expressing interest in participating in community solar, because about 75 to 80% of the residential sites in Rhinebeck cannot site a solar system on their roof. All you have to do is walk out on the street here, look up at the trees and look at the way the roofs are shaped, the small angles and things that they have, or go down in the hamlet of Rhinecliff and see the same thing, and you can realize that most people in Rhinebeck, homeowners, can't access solar. So community solar is a way that they can do that. I think if you tax a community solar system, you're essentially taxing people who, you're adding a cost to people who can't afford or can't place a solar system on their roof now just because they like their trees and they don't want to cut them down, for example. So I think this kind of points in the wrong direction if the town is actually serious about implementing small community solar projects, and I hope that the town doesn't go through with this. I do have a couple of questions though. The town is not proposing that it opt out of RPTL 487 in its entirety?
No.
And if, how would you propose that a developer look at the town of Rhinebeck and assess whether or not he or she should start the long road to developing a community solar project if we have, he or she's facing an uncertain potential tax that has to be negotiated with an assessor? I mean, it's a simple question. I mean, how do I decide if I should even bother to start the planning board process or the utility application process, all of which costs tens of thousands of dollars if I don't know what the tax will be or if there will be a tax?
Okay, when you're finished, I'll respond to the board.
Okay. And then I'd also like to let Warren know that most towns that have implemented solar zoning laws have not implemented pilots. I know some have, like the town of Hyde Park, but the town of Hyde Park also allows up to 2 megawatt systems, which is generally the standard. 95% of the solar systems, community solar systems that are being proposed and developed in the state of New York are 2 megawatts AC in size. That equates to about 2.7 megawatts DC in size. And as I said earlier, the town of Rhinebeck solar zoning law already limits systems to about half a megawatt DC size. So about 1/5 the most common size that's being developed in the state of New York right now.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I have to
Any
leave
other-
for another meeting.
Any other comments from anybody? Warren, you want-
So let me just quickly respond to that. The way we enacted this law is so that we would, when a solar developer comes into town, they would contact the town attorney and the assessor and the town board, and we would be sitting down with them from the onset to see whether a pilot is necessary and what amount for the project. So it would be done on a case-by-case basis. We would negotiate a reasonable pilot based upon the scope and nature of the project. We have it, as I said, in Hyde Park, we passed a pilot law which is more restrictive than this. We have 7 applications pending. We've already negotiated 2 pilots without too much difficulty. We find that the solar developers are quite sophisticated in coming into the town with proposals and rationale for what the pilot should be and what it should not be. So And if the case can be made that there's a solar, a community solar or something of that nature that's a benefit to the community, and it may be that pilot, very small pilot requirement would be negotiated with the developer. This would give the town the flexibility to deal on a case-by-case basis with the development. So I see no reason why this should prohibit or have a chilling effect on developers. If it turns out that we are contacted by a number of developers after we pass the pilot law and say we were ready to come into town with a beneficial project, the town could always review the pilot law and decide either to amend it, change it, or abandon it. But if we don't have the pilot law, then we lose the opportunity to collect the pilot payment for certain developments that come in. So I think it's...
And it's discretionary. We could, if people say that they can't afford it, we could...
Well, it's got to be, it's a fairly sophisticated negotiation system we found so far in dealing with them in Hyde Park. The solar developers who come in are quite sophisticated, and they have a component of their development plan that deals only with pilot programs. And so far it's been not a difficult process to get through. But if it doesn't work and we find that we have beneficial projects that could possibly have been sited in the town and we lose out on them, then we may want to revise our pilot accordingly.
Any other comments from anybody?
Can I ask a question?
No, this is not a question and answer. You can make your comments.
Hold
I
on,
have got to get to another meeting. So.
Warren, you can go.
Okay.
Do you have to go? Sorry, hold on, Jeff. I think somebody else wants to comment. Is there a hand raised? No? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Lancer. My wife and I have been residents of Rhinebeck for about 4.5 years. We live in the gardens. This is just a general question about the applicability of solar as it's being contemplated. Would it require, and anybody can answer this, would it require the construction of a separate infrastructure for connection purposes? Or could the power be transmitted over existing lines? Thank you.
Thank you. Warren, do you want to?
I'm not an expert in how these facilities are built. Jeff could probably answer that question. I do.
We wrote this law to allow solar farms within the town. So it's a commercial use on residential land because we do support solar and renewable energy, and we support everyone being able to have access to it. There are many residents who couldn't have solar because they live in condos, or because they live in apartments, or because their roof isn't suited. We wrote a pretty restrictive law because we were concerned with the visual impact of this on the town, and we want to preserve our rural look and our open space. So we wanted to start slowly. It also is self-regulating in that it has to be fed into the grid in order to be a benefit. So there are places where three-phase power feeds exist, and we thought that a developer would choose to put it there rather than put in more expensive infrastructure. So I believe it's self-regulating, and that's how we wrote the
They
law.
have to be able to tie into the grid.
Have to be able to
Depends on the type of
If
facility.
they put a farm in the middle of nowhere, they have to
put the infrastructure in, which is quite costly, but maybe somebody would want to do that. So this allows for it either way.
I've got to go, but if you have anything else you need to
I think
go.
we'll be okay.
Can I-
Thanks, Warren.
Follow up with the
Yeah,
comment.
Jeff.
Warren, I think if you're going to hold Hyde Park up as an example, you mentioned 7 projects, I think you owe it to everybody to tell us what the size of each of those
We just
projects
passed a law in town of Northeast and are doing one in town of Pine Plains also.
are. So you mentioned Hyde Park.
Listen, I'm not gonna argue with you.
Jeff, let me say,
Jeff, if
can
you
I?
know, if you're not happy with it, you've made your point, and then the board will make its decision.
Well, I can tell you what the size of the
Well,
projects are. in
we
Hyde Park.
did this
They're bigger.
specific
They're
for
bigger than-
Rhinebeck. We wanted to limit the size. We were, public comments we have, well, there we weren't many until we passed the law. We were concerned with visual impact. Our MIT engineer here, IBM fellow, not that stupid, really worked hard to ensure that as technology advances, what defines the size is output, not size, because we believe in a couple of years technology will be better, so what you can put in a 0.5 megawatt array now, the size of it, which is what, about 2 acres or under 2 acres?
Yes.
Okay, we believe that in a couple of years that will be producing 2 megawatts. And for us, it was important to mitigate, we're not Hyde Park, we're Rhinebeck. And we wanted to mitigate visual clutter, and because this is a commercial use in residential areas, we were very, very sensitive to that. And I still believe in this, and I believe it can work. You know, we have arrays going up on farm buildings, or permits for that, but we're not Hyde Park, we're Rhinebeck. So.
Yes, no, I understand.
Before you go, I just want to make, I'm going to leave, I'll let you comment. I just wanted to, this is a point I probably should have made on the previous public hearing with regard to our workforce housing project. I mean, Jeff made a point that developers need to know in advance before they come into a community what's going to be expected of them. And I just wanted to point out in the workforce housing law, and I should have responded to Michael while I was here, but I told him this. The way we've set up that law was that there's going to be a very intensive review of any affordable housing project or workforce housing project that would be cited in that particular area of the town. And the town would hope to attract a developer that would come in and do a project that's beneficial to the town and the community. The problem is that if they come in and they have to go through a rezoning process before the town board, which is very intense and does involve the planning board and involves a seeker review. When they're finished with that project, they've spent a considerable amount of money investing in getting the project approved by the town board. They don't want to then have to worry about going to the planning board for a special permit review, which could then be turned down after spending possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars investing in the project. And that's the reason why we decided not to have the project go through a special permit review by the planning board after the intensive rezoning review by the town board. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I didn't really answer you, but thanks for making the point, Warren. And the affordable workforce housing will be continued, so there's time for more comments on that. We have a little bit of work to do on that law. And now we're back to Jeff.
I agree with pilots for 2 megawatt systems, AC, and I think it's totally fine if the town of Hyde Park decided they want to permit systems that size. I'm happy that the town of Rhinebeck did not, because I don't think they would fit in this town. But so I'm not arguing against you.
And let me just say, we have the discretion at the beginning of a project to say, okay, we're not charging, we're not going to charge a pilot fee. So I think it gives us some latitude and allows us to do it if something bigger does come in. What if someone wants to do a parking lot cover with these things? We wouldn't have this law in place and we wouldn't be able to capture it. Speaking for myself, who's been supportive of all renewable energy, we're not I'm not looking to wring a small amount of taxes off a smaller way. I'm looking to protect the town in event that something comes in and we need to negotiate. That's my point of view.
So finally, on the size, when the town board voted to limit the size of solar farms, I met with Alan, engineer to engineer. We went over the technology. We are not going to see even 1 megawatt systems in the next decade, commercially viable or financially viable technology on 2 acres, so I don't think that is going to happen.
Okay.
And I would gladly meet with Alan if we want to discuss it further.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other comments about the solar pilot law? I'm going to close the public hearing. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any comments from the town board? Okay, thank you. We'll pick up our resolutions. I know we have I'm going to go out of order, if that's okay with you guys. We have a large group here, the Gardens Trail Committee. So I'd like to take you now, because you've been so patient, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. And we have Al, I forget your last name, Al. Ragucci presenting, so please come on up.
I'm not an MIT engineer, but I'm not stupid either.
I actually met some stupid MIT graduates.
But Alan's smart.
I do want to thank you for the opportunity to address the board about this issue. I have a number of Gardens residents here, including the committee that's been looking at possible trails from the Gardens into the village of Rhinebeck. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what we discussed as a committee. I don't know, we have, one of our members used a brilliant way of determining how many people live in the Gardens by counting garage doors, which maybe MIT might be interested in. Mr. Harwood counted garage doors, and he determined that we have a total of 239 residents when phase 3 of the Gardens is completed. At one and a half persons per unit, that means we'll have about 359 people living in the Gardens, which is only slightly smaller than Rhinecliff. It's the most dense residential area outside of the village. So we have a lot of people there. We are concerned because the ability to walk into the village is severely limited by, first of all, Rhinecliff Road, which of course, as you know, is a dangerous road to walk on. And as a result, it limits the ability of the residents of the Gardens to walk into the village or to get to some of the other amenities that are here. So we've been meeting. I met with, a few of us met with Winnicky and talked to them about possibilities for trails. They have a right-of-way through the Gardens right now, but it's run into a couple of roadblocks. So there are a couple of things we've looked at. We've looked at extending the path of the woods down to a connector trail in the Gardens, or to the entrance to the Gardens. Another possibility is extending the sidewalk on Rhinecliff Road to the entrance to the Gardens. Winnicky has a right-of-way on Gardens property, which could lead into the village. We want to get far enough to hook up with the sidewalk on either side of the road, or extend the sidewalk to where the trail would exit onto Rhinecliff Road. So those are a couple of the possibilities. The Gardens owns a decent amount of property. If we do a trail on the Rhinecliff Road side, one of the routes we looked at was just to the west of the Baker Bed and Breakfast, which is right across the street from the library, as you know.
Just to the west. Who owns that land?
That part of that land is owned by
The hospital?
the hospital. Okay, that's one of the problems, right? We'd have to get an easement from the hospital, and I know that Winnicke has broached this subject before with both the town board and the hospital. What we're looking for here from the board is support from you. You know the benefit of this. Our major concern is safety. The people who live in the gardens are, I don't want to say elderly because they're here. But it is, we're aging, right? We're getting better. But it is obviously dangerous to walk on Rhine Cliff Road, regardless of your age. The Astor Road is a bit easier to walk on, and there is quite a bit of room to extend the sidewalk from the woods. There's quite a bit of room there, and that's town land, I believe, is it not?
Village.
That's village property, so that may be an easier way to go.
Well, that would be good for part of the gardens, and then it might be beneficial to have access from the south side as well.
Absolutely, in fact, we prefer a loop. You know, those of us who walk the loop from...
So how can we help?
Well, you can help in, first of all, supporting it. Secondly, any financial help would be wonderful, particularly extending sidewalks. That would be something that would be in your province to do, your power to do. That would certainly be helpful. If there's any help you can lend to us in terms of dealing with the hospital as well. The hospital was approached very briefly by Winnicke to use their piece of land that they own there for right-of-way. We've heard all kinds of rumors. The hospital is going to sell the land, the hospital is going to sell Wells Manor, therefore they didn't want to put an easement through the property. Those rumors apparently have been floating around for a long time and nothing's been done, so.
So I am meeting with Denise George, well, I'm asking her for a meeting soon to talk about other issues, and I'd be happy to ask about that.
That would be absolutely terrific.
I mean, we're all in, I mean, as a board, we're in favor of walkability, and certainly as we age, we want to be able to walk into the village. The village is the center of our town. I know that we've been talking in our joint village town environmental committee about how we can even get biking into the village from the north of our town. You know, the Empire State Rail Trail just totally kind of skipped over us. They're coming over the bridge and going up to Red Hook.
Yeah, I looked at that online. I looked at the Empire Trail and I'm astounded. Hyde Park and Rhinebeck were completely cut out of that.
Yeah, yes. We're astounded too. So we are working on that, and you know, River Road is a county road.
Right.
And Rhine Cliff Road is a county road. And state, sorry. So, I mean, speaking for myself, I support this. We've been talking about it in our joint environmental committee. Paul Korshak, who is running for the village board right now, is passionate about this. He's former MTA executive and really believes in walkability and trails. So how do you guys feel?
Being of a certain age, yes.
Chauncey's over 60.
Yeah, we have some beautiful land on the gardens that Winnicke has a right-of-way through, which would make a great trail. And then if we could come out near the Baker property, we would be across the street from the library. And I don't know if you know, I'm president of the library board, so we welcome the opportunity for...
Al's very busy.
That's right.
He's at food pantry on Fridays.
Food pantries on Fridays, that's my
time.
library board, and I get the pleasure of coming here and speaking to the town board as well. So it would be great because we would end up across the street from the library, which would connect with the trails that are back by the recreation center there behind the library. I mean, it would be a great spot. It would keep us...
And you have the sidewalk all the way into town.
Right, we have the sidewalk.
I gotta say, I'm ignorant, and I know Sally's here, and she's probably a lot less ignorant, probably even learned about this. I don't know how we do sidewalks on private property. I haven't done that yet, but I'd certainly be willing to learn and figure it out. I mean, I think it would be great to have a loop from, you know, the gardens through the woods to the north part of town, and then from the gardens along Rhine Cliff Road to the library, which would give you those walking trails and a sidewalk into the rest of the village.
Right, no, it would be a great connector. And I know Winnicke has some other plans as well for trails around the town. through the
I don't know
cemetery.
how we achieve it, I don't know who maintains it, but, you know,
Well, that's what's interesting about it is we could, this could be a shared cost in a sense. Winnicke would help us with some grant money to build it, and then the homeowners association could spend some of its money to maintain it after the trail is built. So it could be a shared cost thing. As far as the sidewalks are concerned, my assumption is that you have so many feet right away off of the road in order to put sidewalks in. So I don't know exactly what the law is, but that's typically what happens in towns, is they have so many feet off of the road where they have a right of way in order to put
it's like
sidewalks in.
from the center line,
Right.
15 feet from the,
Yeah.
depends on the designation of the road, but from the center line of the road to,
Well, the Astor Road side seems to be pretty easy. So you got the water there, which is an issue, but there's lots of kind of open land. where-
village water and wastewater.
Yes,
And then the garden zones, the rest of that,
yes.
I'm sorry, the wood zones, the rest of that stretch from the Wells Manor, from the,
Up to the village.
up to the village.
Right, where their trail is now.
Well, this is exciting, and it's great that there are so many people here supporting it. What's our next step?
Well, I'm gonna
Are you
meet.
the president of
No,
this?
no,
Of this group?
Yvonne Pierce is here, she's the one who's really heading this. I just met with Winnicke a couple of times and they gave us some ideas, and they're very supportive, they're very anxious. So I would like the board to consider those options that we talked about. A sidewalk up to the entrance of gardens on Rhine Cliff Road, hooking up with the woods trail on Astor Road, or if we can get the right-of-way to put a trail over the hospital property that would meet up with where the Baker property is, and that wouldn't get us to a sidewalk yet on that side. The sidewalk's not quite up to where the trail would come out on the west side of the Baker property, so we need a little bit of sidewalk there to extend his
I
sidewalk.
don't know
a
the
bit.
topography of the hospital land at all, and we do have town land, because we have the highway garage.
Yes,
I
yes.
don't, you know,
One of the plans that Winnicke had was to come out next to the town garage.
yeah, I
Correct.
remember.
However, again, that doesn't get us to a sidewalk. You don't have a sidewalk up to there. I mean, that's another option if we can get a sidewalk up to there
Well,
on that
it
side.
sounds to me like what we need is a study, just for somebody to look at the alternatives and say, this one costs this, and here are the advantages and disadvantages and so on, that we could then look at and see which one we like the best.
Okay, I think I can work with Winnicke on that, and they can help me with that. They've had experience with this, obviously. So I will work.
Sally's laughing.
I'd like to say,
Come on up, Sally.
I was thinking more, well, whatever.
hi, Sally Mazzarella. I wasn't here tonight for Winnicke, but I'd be very happy to speak for Winnicke. Winnicke is extremely interested in trails. As you know, we recently received $1.2 million from the state to acquire 335 acres in Red Hook. And then this year, we got a $500,000 grant to do trails within that property. Of course, those grants have to be matched. The $1.2 million, we're working with the town of Red Hook. They have their open space fund, and we'll work towards a match for the $1.2 million. The $500,000 grant, we're going to have to raise $1 million for that. And so there's going to be fundraising that Winnicke would be involved in. We did prepare a grant proposal for Rhinebeck, and of course we need the support of the town board in order to submit that grant, so we were not able to do that.
That was for the cemetery.
Well, no, it included not only the cemetery was included in that, but it did include the grant, the trail that would go through the gardens and connect to the park. So we would be happy to look at that proposal again and submit it, and, you know, we could certainly review it. I was not part of the discussions that happened between Winnicke and the town, so I'm not sure what happened with that.
Well,
But-
Chauncey was, and maybe we could speak to it a little bit, and I know that serendipitously, Chauncey just emailed Winnicke a week or so ago, following up. For us, I think that there were big unanswered questions about deeds in the cemetery. So if the grant could be uncoupled with the cemetery, it would be a lot easier, and we could deal with that on a separate, well, I'll let Chauncey speak to this.
Did I hear you mention deeds?
Yes. Is that the right thing?
Yes, but that question has been satisfactorily answered. Let me back up a little bit and review this. Many of you probably know the history. 2 years ago, in June or July of 2017, we were asked to pass a resolution approving and endorsing an application to be made by Winnicke to, is it the State Parks Department, Sally?
Yeah, it's the annual grant request that comes out for the region, and it probably would have happened through Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation.
All right, thank you. And as I recall, the application was due June 30th, and it was in May or June when we got the request. One of the very first issues we raised was, well, wait, we don't know if in the history of the cemetery, which was put together from many different parcels, whether there mightn't be restrictions in the title preventing the use of the cemetery land or some parts of it through which a trail might pass for any purpose other than for cemetery purposes. So in, I think it was October of 2017, after quite a bit of discussion between Winnicke and us, it was agreed that we would commission a title search to answer that question and that Winnicke would pay for it. And it was not terribly expensive. It was less than $1,000. I think it was about $600. And wonderful, no problem. We had a check, there are no deed restrictions, and we were able to check that issue off of the list. There may be other questions, and nothing like this could be simple, but there was at that time, and there continues to be, one other really major matter. We were asked to adopt a resolution approving and endorsing, and that was the language required by the Parks Department, approving and endorsing the application by Winnicke to the state for the grant. And we said, well, fine, may we please see the application? We can't vote to approve and endorse something that we haven't seen. And it wasn't ready, and it couldn't be given to us, and therefore we couldn't act. In March of last year, I believe it was March, I'm morally certain it was March, I sent Winnicke's CEO a reminder saying, you know, I'll bet this issue is coming up again by June 30th, and I'll bet you are hoping to put a grant application in with our support. Got to see the application. Please get it to us. It didn't happen, and I don't know why. And in reciting this history, I'm not being critical. There may be all kinds of things that I don't know about that have led to their application not being prepared, but we haven't seen it. So there were some hard feelings about that, I believe, last year, and I understand that, and that's fine. Just last week, and this is purely coincidental, I came to a reminder on my calendar, write to Greg Swansea again. And I did, and I sent him an email last week saying, look, if you're going to be asking us to approve and endorse your application again this year, please get it to us. I asked him to get it to us by May 1st, earlier if possible. Until we see it, until we know what we're approving and endorsing, we can't approve and endorse it. So I know Sally's heard this speech before. I apologize for
you know,
those of you who have, but that's the story.
Okay, Chauncey, and I appreciate that because I did not have all that information, because I did not participate in that, so I really would like to revisit that and sit down with the town board. We now have a new executive director, it's an interim executive director, so things will be a little different, so I hope we could work together on this. And
I'll meet with you on an hour's notice.
We'd
anytime
love
you
to.
want.
I forgot the reason why. It's because we couldn't endorse something we hadn't seen.
Yeah, so Greg Swansea is no longer with the organization. So I'm hoping, and he has done wonderful things in terms of the grants that we have for Red Hook, and I'm hoping that that could happen in Rhinebeck.
Absolutely.
We would like very much to see a trail network developed, not only for seniors, our young children that are going back and forth to school and running around the neighborhood. It would be wonderful for them to be able to have safe places to walk and...
People who want to get exercise
Right.
and walk.
Absolutely. It's really, trails and sidewalks that are healthy for everyone, and Winnicke is committed to that. So I would like very much to revisit this with the
So
town.
we've got Sally offering for Winnicke, we've
Right.
got Chauncey on board for the town board, we have Yvonne and Al,
And you're going to talk to the hospital.
and I'm going to talk to the hospital.
Right. We did have a conversation with the hospital, and we also said that we would be flexible if at any time they wanted to develop a piece of their property, that the easement would be designed in a way where it was flexible. So we're willing to change the route if we have to in the future, and work with the hospital in any way that we could accomplish that.
Sally,
And in terms of the Empire State Trail, I just want to say something, Elizabeth. The trail network in Rhinebeck, we're hoping at some point that we could connect to the Empire State Trail. So we have paid for a trail study in Rhinebeck, and eventually the trail will connect to the Empire State Trail. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of money.
It'll be worth it though, it literally comes over the bridge
Right.
and makes a left-hand
Right,
turn from
right.
200 feet of Rhinebeck.
I know.
Right up through.
I sit on the Greenway board, and I shouted out about that a number of times, but
So,
there's a lot of
the
political
business
stuff
people,
that went into that.
Yeah.
so the business people in Rhinebeck would be interested in that the space where the trail is running over the Kingston-Rhinecliff Bridge, hooking up with New Paltz, they're estimating that 400,000 people a year will use those areas right around Kingston-Rhinecliff, the walkway, and the connection to New Paltz. 400,000 people a year.
That's a lot, that's great,
So-
great. All right, thank you.
Sally, can you have the name of that new executive officer?
No, they have an interim director.
Yeah, Sarah Olson, who ran the National Park, is the interim director. Olson, O-L-S-E-N.
I'd like to add just one other thing, lest I give the impression that once we've seen and approved the application, there couldn't possibly be any other problems. Of course, there can be a case, and there is.
It's never easy.
But for example, and in particular, and it's the only significant example that comes to mind, when I first discussed this with Greg 2 years ago, or a little more than 2 years ago, whatever it is, a little less than 2 years ago, we looked at some language that the state wanted in the proposed form of resolution to the effect that if ever in the future, Winnicke, holding an easement through the cemetery for its trail, failed to continue to observe whatever its obligations were, for example, maintenance and so forth, that then the town would take over responsibility. And I said to Greg, I don't know how likely it is that we want to agree to that. And his thought was that probably the state would not insist upon that one. But that's an example. There will be issues, but the big thing is to see the application.
Vaughn, did you want to add anything?
Yvonne Pearson. I walk that route almost every day in the summertime. And one of my real concerns is the safety aspect, because whether we build this or not, people are already doing it. They're already walking on the road. There's mothers jogging with baby carriages, there's bikers, there's all kinds of joggers. In fact, if you go along the side of Rhinecliff Road, there's a path worn in the grass where people are walking whenever a car passes to get off the road. It's worn into the grass that's already there. So there is, when I look at it, from my standpoint, there's space, there's already use. It's just a way of making this a lot safer, because cars go fast. And on Astor Drive, there's even more space, and there's less speed on that road, but it's curvy. So you can't, there's blind curves, and there's deer, and there's all kinds. So that's a dangerous road in a different way, because it's narrow, it's curvy, and drivers can't see that well. And Rhinecliff Road is nice and straight, but cars go very fast, and there seems to me, it looks like it should be not, irrespective of the nice Winnicke trails that could cut through and connect everything, just from a pure safety standpoint, I would hate to have this, have someone get injured, as a way to drive this forward. I hope we can do that before there's some kind of accident with a jogger or a baby carriage or a bicyclist on one of these roads, because they are extremely popular already. And so that's what I would really like to see, is more safety in that regard. And not just a luxury to have some trails, but...
It's not a luxury, it's a necessity for, high quality town living.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? I would ask that we take a 5-minute break and go on with our agenda. Is that okay? Thanks, we'll be back. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Okay, that was good. Chauncey, thanks for remembering why we couldn't do the trails. You're awesome. I knew there was a big reason, because we never saw anything. Right.
I remembered that, actually.
Okay, we have Resolution 219-046, Town Hall Use Application for the Hudson Valley CSA Coalition. May I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thanks, Ed. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Alan. Is there any discussion?
There's no problem with this. I checked into it. There's never been a problem before, so we can go ahead with it.
There's no problem.
No problem.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. I will make a motion for Resolution 2019-052 for our budget transfers and amendment. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Chauncey. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. I will make a motion for Resolution 2019-053, our preliminary abstracts of vouchers 186 through 194, 9 checks totaling $9,737.09. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Chauncey. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. I will make a motion for Resolution 2019-054 for the preliminary abstracts, vouchers 195 through 273, 45 checks totaling $48,510.37. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ed. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. In case anybody's wondering why I always motion the financials, it's because as the supervisor, I'm chief financial officer, and I consider this my responsibility, and I work on this the preceding weeks before it comes before the town. Okay. Just thought I'd say that because I do motion them. I am looking for a motion, and I can't read now, for Resolution 2019-055, adopting local law number 1 of 2019, entitled A Local Law Amending Chapter 107 of the Rhinebeck Town Code. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Chauncey. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. Is there any discussion?
I'm not convinced that Jeff Irish's argument is invalid. I think it adds to the uncertainty in putting together a proposal for a solar farm. And the fact that other towns have exempted the first megawatt or whatever seems like it's not an unreasonable position.
But it's at our discretion, and we can say, you're 0.5 megawatt, we're not charging you anything, and if we don't have this, and a bigger system comes in where...
Well, we don't allow bigger systems.
Well, but couldn't it conceivably go on a rooftop of an existing building? An equestrian,
You mean,
something? I guess not.
no, this is for a solar farm. Our limit on solar farms is roughly half a megawatt. We're talking installation that would cost somewhere around $500,000 to install, which therefore would increase the property value by roughly that. And let's say our tax rate is $2 a thousand, that would say that we're looking at $1,000 a year in taxes.
But it's a commercial use, and if people are making money and this community is supporting it, why wouldn't we want the discretion to case by case be able to say this? And wouldn't the developer know beforehand what we're doing?
Yes. Warren explained that, yes.
Yeah, I said that. So we would know, it would be a case-by-case decision on our part.
Yeah.
Sure, we'd be, flexible.
I'd be inclined to exempt some of it. I mean, how much would you settle for? I mean, that would be doing a case-by-case, but I answer my own question. We do it on a case-by-case basis.
Is there any other discussion? So by roll call, Ed?
Well, since it's on case-by-case, I'd say keep this, and I'd say yes.
Ed? Aye. Alan?
No.
Chauncey?
Aye.
And I vote yes. The motion passes. Resolution 2019-056, revised procurement policy and procedures. May I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thanks, Ed. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Chauncey. You want to take us through this,
Yeah,
Ed?
I just changed a few things so that it would make simple purchases a lot easier for all of us.
You brought this up to the new millennium. It's not
Yeah.
1960s standards, or?
Right. It's less stringent, requires less, procedures.
I want to say I don't think it's less stringent. I think it takes into effect current pricing.
Yeah, I try, and I
Okay.
put a clause in there to look at this every year.
Okay, great, great.
So we work on it.
Thanks, and Warren signed off on it, and
Yes.
I've read it. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Resolution 2019-057, solicitation of bids for improvements to Town Hall large meeting room, which is here.
Right, and this includes painting and windows, the 4 windows to be renovated. And I think we can move forward with this now.
Great. Is there any further discussion?
Did we have a motion?
Do we have a motion?
Well, I'm going to make a motion.
I made a motion.
Ed, is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Alan. Is there any more discussion or rediscussion since we've gotten to the floor? Sorry, the trail discussion was good, but, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Is there any new business before the board?
Yes, I have a resolution. I'll use copies.
I have one too, don't let me forget.
Never will.
That's how you might, right?
Okay, so this is Resolution 2019-058, agreements with summer recreation staff for cost of training. In the past, we've had issues with lifeguards who have not been willing to serve the entire summer, and therefore we've had to close the pool because we don't have lifeguards. what we created here is an incentive for people to work the whole summer by saying, we'll pay for their certification training, which is $286 in return for them working the whole summer. And the agreement that's attached would be the agreement that both the aquatics director and that the lifeguards would sign. And if they sign that, they're agreeing to work the whole summer. And in return, we will pay for their certification, $286. And if they don't work the whole summer, then they forfeit the $286.
Their last paycheck.
Problem, something like that, yeah. So that, Warren's reviewed this, it's all good. And by the way, the certification training is next weekend, so we need to get this in place immediately.
Pressure.
No pressure.
Did you bring this to the floor? Did we vote on it?
Yeah, so I moved that we
second.
pass resolution.
All right, I'll
12.
second it.
Yeah.
I guess we discussed it. Is there any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. I have this, I think we need to make an amendment to it. I'd like to make a motion for Resolution 2019-059, change of counsel for our tax certiorari attorney. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks. Karen Hagstrom was our certiorari attorney. She was of counsel at Corbally Garland and has left to join the new firm. This is authorizing me to execute an engagement letter in substantially the same form as it was before. One thing I'd like to do is allow me to amend it to say that it's Karen Hagstrom at her new firm.
Yes, good.
So I will amend the letter. I'm sorry, what?
The engagement letter has her name in it.
It's a retainer agreement for the law firm of Stanger, Roberts, Davis, and Diamond.
Yeah, while the primary attorney working on tax cert matters, Karen Hagstrom, other attorneys in the firm.
We
et cetera, et
don't
cetera.
want that. We only want Karen Hagstrom.
Yeah, not the firm. just
Not
her.
the firm. We only want Karen Hagstrom. We don't want other attorneys. So, but thank you. So.
I think Elizabeth, I see where the insertion is, and that is intended to insert her name. Just before that, though, I think, well, let me start reading with the
Chauncey,
second.
read the last paragraph, because it does say, while the primary attorney working on tax certiorari matters is Karen E. Hagstrom, Esquire, other attorneys in the firm and members of our staff may work on your matters by signing this letter. You authorize them to do so. So I think we strike that.
I listen too. Yes.
And strike out the last sentence as well, correct?
What do you mean by the last sentence?
I'm sorry, the last sentence in that paragraph, unless we agree
Oh,
otherwise in
sorry.
writing.
Yes, I agree. But, okay, and I think those changes are fine and should be made. But if you go back to the second and third lines, please allow this letter to serve as a retainer agreement for, you want to strike out the words the law firm there. So that it reads for Karen Hagstrom
Yeah.
of Stenger.
Yes. Since we don't have a relationship with this law firm and we don't know anybody there, we want to be cautious. John?
I don't think you should pass this with those amendments, because there are two consent to change attorneys for two matters, which also have their names. I think you need her to redraft this and resubmit it.
Yeah, it's consent.
Will you can I ask for permission to sign? We have a couple of certiorari matters that need some attention. The files are with court, I believe. I'd like to get it done sooner than our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Why don't we pass the resolution authorizing the supervisor to execute an agreement in the same or substantially the same form as that attached, with such changes therein as she with advice of counsel shall approve. Something like that. Would that work for you, John?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then you can
Do
fix it up and get it
have
done in a day or two.
Thank you. So there is a motion to revise, all in favor of revising the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we have an open motion on the floor to allow me to do this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Great. Well, is there any comment or, oh, we have the cemetery administrator job description.
Yeah. Did we ever hear back from the county on this job description?
I don't know, I'm not in charge of that.
Okay, I don't know either. I am in
I
charge.
haven't heard of it.
Should we table this until we
Yeah, let's,
hear back from the county?
yeah. We don't
I
have
mean,
to,
Suzanne is,
Chris, we
she needs to be approved before she's hired.
have to get
And I think we're-
description for the job.
I mean, I think we're fine with this description, it has to go with the county. So I think we're
So-
all agreed on.
So-
Start yet.
what if we passed a resolution saying that on the approval of the county, she can start
I
working?
think we did that already. We passed a resolution to hire her.
Yes.
She needs to be approved by the county, so I
So as
think,
soon as that happens, she starts, goes
I
away.
can check with Shelley.
I'll be in
Yeah,
tomorrow.
I
I
already
can
did.
do it.
Yeah,
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Not sure why we did this, I think because we forgot to do it last time.
Yes, we didn't run it by the county because I didn't know you were supposed to.
I'll let her know she doesn't start.
Well, it's just something we're trying to do now before we hire people, so that we don't hire them and find out they haven't been approved.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, although I'm batting 1,000 on that and getting everyone approved. Anything else? Anybody else want? Hearing nothing, I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody. Good night.